Good day, viewers, listeners, and participants of the 2021 National Universities Debate Competition. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development is proud to see students debating at such a high level, showcasing to the world what they know and how they want it to transform the world for the better. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development is mandated by the government of Zimbabwe to formulate and implement policies related to skills training and development and the promotion of science, technology, and innovation in Zimbabwe. Debating is one of the key skills that the ministry promotes among students, as it helps them to gain the clarity and confidence needed in confronting the challenges of life as and when they come. The ministry comprises of 6 technical departments, namely the tertiary education programs, the higher education programs, quality assurance and standards, research, development and innovation, projects and technology transfer, and the Zimbabwe National Commission for UNESCO. Among other responsibilities, the ministry oversees the promotion of science and technology, research and development, innovations, supervises and accredits teacher education, technical and vocational education and training, TVET, and university education. It also facilitates cooperation in research and development, higher and tertiary education, as well as in science and technology at local, regional, and international levels. The ministry is responsible for a total of 19 grant-aided institutions, which include 13 state universities, the Zimbabwe Development Fund, which provides funding in higher education, the National Biotechnology Authority, the Zimbabwe Council for Higher Education, as well as specialized entities like Verify Engineering and Fine Out Engineering. As you can note, the ministry's work and mandate is broad, and as such requires the ministry to work with and through different partners in addressing the needs of students and staff. Say What is one of those partners that has been complementing the work of the ministry through its immense contribution towards the promotion of students' sexual reproductive health, wellness, and life skills development. Through the work of Say What, the ministry has been able to appreciate better the health and wellness related needs of students, and this has helped in the crafting and implementation of more responsive policies for the tertiary education sector. The organization is especially playing a crucial role in addressing sexual harassment issues in tertiary institutions, and their input is being very helpful and will help in the development of the first sexual harassment policy for tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe. Of late, Say What has also come on board in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in tertiary institutions through donation of COVID-19 PPE and related medication in most of the affected colleges. The 2021 Speak and Solve Initiative, SASI, National Universities Debate Competition, is presenting the ministry with yet another opportunity to learn from students on how to address emerging and contemporary health and developmental issues affecting students, such as COVID-19. We are listening and learning. We are a listening and learning ministry, eager to tap into the ideas and arguments put forward by our students across all our institutions of learning. Our goal is to ensure that institutions of higher learning remain incubators of new ideas and innovations, which will definitely take our country to another level. We always say universities are marketplaces of ideas. As rightfully alluded by the title of the debate, Speak and Solve, we are looking forward to a viable solution to national, regional, and international developmental problems that we are grappling with. It is a debate with a difference, as it will only seek to entertain, but also to help viewers and listeners to think differently on issues which are key to student development and wellness. Yes, COVID-19 has been devastating to our education system. However, we cannot fold our hands and just watch fall. This is the time to innovate, find new ways of doing business, find new ways of teaching and learning to ensure that our education can continue to happen and that our economies can develop. The ministry is looking forward to hearing about such cutting-edge, innovative ideas from this debate, which can help us to ensure that we improve our education system. I'm informed that this year's edition has only managed to support the participation of 10 state universities, which is just a fraction of our tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe. I therefore do call upon SAWAT and its funding partners to invest more in the competition to cover more tertiary institutions. This will ensure that students from different backgrounds also participate and share their opinions on key issues that are affecting them. To all the 2021 debaters, I challenge you to utilize this precious opportunity to show the world what you are made of. This is your chance to speak your mind and shape tomorrow, that we have the tomorrow that we desire. I wish you all the best in this competition, and may the best win. I thank you.
You are watching the 4th edition of the SASI, Speak and Solve Initiative Debate Competitions. Now, we are, of course, broadcasting to you from the new Say What studios in Harare. And this program is brought to you by Say What with, of course, support from their friends at the Embassy of Sweden in Zimbabwe, UNFPA, SAHI, National AIDS Council, and Econet Zimbabwe. Now we are ready for round 2, and of course we've got our universities, Africa University up against NUST. Now before we get into it, I'm going to ask our contestants today, our debaters, to introduce themselves. I'll start with our lovely lady from Africa University. How are you? Who are you? Where are you're from Africa University, of course, but what are you studying?
My name is Catherine Mutim-Sakwa, and I'm studying agricultural sciences.
Okay, sir.
I'm Melusi Chinyoka, studying computer information systems.
All right. Lady?
My name is Mary Ann Nazombe. I'm studying environmental science and health at the National University of Science and Technology.
My name is Atin Mdare. I'm part 2. I'm studying industrial and manufacturing engineering.
All right. Now, Debaters, I will just take you through the modalities again, just so that you are aware of your time limits. All right, we are going to start off with the opening speech from the affirmative side, and that is going to take 4 minutes, after which the opposers have 1 minute 30 seconds to cross-examine. Once we've done the cross-examination from the opposers, you will then also have 4 minutes to get into your opening speech. Once that is done, affirmative side will cross-examine for another 1 minute 30 seconds. Once we've done with that cross-examination, the opposers will rebut, and that is going to take 4 minutes. Affirmative side will also have their turn to rebut, and that is going to take another 4 minutes. Closing remarks from the opposers will take 3 minutes, and closing remarks from the affirmative will take another 3 minutes. Are we clear on the times? All right, so as soon as I say stop, whether you were mid-sentence, starting a sentence, one word to end of sentence, you stop talking immediately. Are we clear? Are we clear on the rules? All right, so the motion that we are going through for you guys is this House would prosecute perpetrators of domestic violence without the victim's consent. I will repeat it. This House would prosecute perpetrators of domestic violence without the victim's consent. Now, our affirmative side is Africa University. Our opposers are NUST. Africa University, are you ready to begin your opening remarks? All right, your clock starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, this House would prosecute the perpetrators of domestic violence without the victim's consent. Our keywords being this House, the people here present, would prosecute, would conduct legal proceedings against perpetrators, people who conduct harmful actions towards other people, domestic violence behavior between two people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say that if we make this mandatory, if we make this possible, you see that it reduces the rate of domestic violence in households. You see that it deters the perpetrators, because these perpetrators now know that if we actually abuse these people, ladies and gentlemen, we might actually have to face jail time, and perpetrators don't like jail time, and it's ironic with what they do and what the consequences they face. Ladies and gentlemen, it removes and reduces the inflicted people from this domestic violence, ladies and gentlemen. It empowers the social standing of the victims of domestic violence, as we now see that the government now supports and cares for its citizens, ladies and gentlemen. Who does not want to be cared for by their government? Most perpetrators of domestic violence are manipulative. Hence, most people are not able to speak out. Let's take, for instance, emotional blackmail. A perpetrator will emotionally blackmail you because they don't want you to go and report. Let's say a blackmail also from society. It is a taboo for a wife to report for, imprisonment for the husband, a child to report imprisonment for the children, ladies and gentlemen. So you will see that maybe perhaps this will help the children or help the victims to support and get support from the government. Domestic violence, ladies and gentlemen, does not have age.
All right. Opposers, are you ready for your cross-examination? Your clock starts now.
First question, how do you think silencing the victims will empower them at the end of the day?
Please repeat your question.
How does silencing the victims empower them at the end of the day?
They are not being silenced because you see that it requires the government to...
Turn your mic towards you as you speak. Just remember to turn the mic towards you as you speak, both sides. Please remember. All right, continue, sorry.
It's not silence because you see that the government is actually taking measures to use sight instead of ears to identify their victims of domestic violence.
Next question, what is the ultimate goal of your policy?
The ultimate goal of the policy is to remove the perpetrators of domestic violence, reducing the rates of domestic violence, hence improving the freedom of women, improving the freedom of every other victim of domestic violence.
And please tell us again how you plan to do that.
We plan to use security, police patrols. We actually plan to use social organizations to identify these victims.
Thank you very much.
You have no more questions. You have 30 seconds.
I have no more questions.
You sure? Like one more, you can squeeze it in.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, all right. With 30 seconds to go, they are done with their cross-examination, which means that we are now setting the clock for you to begin your opening remarks. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes. Your clock starts now.
All right, so panel, we think that domestic violence and the problems that we have in Zimbabwe, especially when it comes to non-reporting of violent incidences from gender minorities, especially women and also men, is because firstly, the societal perception that exists about how women or any gender minority should be submissive to a particular superior complex. For example, how women should always submit to their husbands, how society always puts victims and like shadows them in a box where they're supposed to behave in a particular way, right? So this is what happens. When a woman or any gender minority gets exposed to things like domestic violence, the reason why they shun away is because of the societal perceptions that exist within status quo that prevent them from actually speaking out and going out, right? So what does their policy do, and why do we think it doesn't work and it doesn't solve the problems that we have within status quo? Firstly, we tell you that when government takes the forefront in fighting against gender-based violence, you then disempower women from telling their own story and any other gender minority. Why do we think that this is particularly problematic? We have told you how, like, the problem that we have in the first place is the perception that society has on defining a particular gender role and how people are supposed to behave, right? So when you then put government within the community, what happens is you never really break the perceptions and you never really break all those gender stereotypes that exist on how people should behave and on how women should be submissive and how gender minorities should keep quiet at any instance. But what you do is you empower societal narratives of them protecting each other and covering from each other, and the government then becomes the enemy, which is something that we don't vie for. What we push for from side non-affirmative is firstly, we push for a victim-friendly criminal justice system. What we mean is the justice system in any country or in any place should be victim-centered, right? It should focus on empowering victims by breaking societal norms and gender stereotypes that exist on how people should behave, right? And how does like a government actively do that? We don't think that a government actively does that by not going behind the back of victims and like suing or arresting and prosecuting the people that are abusing them, but it does so by empowering the voices of the women, by things that she says, but it doesn't really show us how without the consent of the victim part then works. We think that panel, what then works in this debate is the empowerment of particular structures that exist within society. For example, having the victim-friendly police unit within any state going out there to communities to try and break the perceptions that exist within community when it comes to gender-based violence, firstly. And secondly, we want to break the psychological inferiority complex that then exists with the victims. Because what happens when you prosecute or persecute the perpetrator of violence without consulting the victim? What happens is the government is the one that jumped in. The victim never really gets closure because they're not directly involved in the bringing down of their own gender abuse, and they're not really involved in their own story, right? The government gets to narrate the story for them, and victims are never really involved in telling their own story. The problem that we have with that is, firstly, government then appears as an enemy to society because they appear to be just breaking things around, right? But what we want is government and the criminal justice system to work hand in glove with empowering communities so that people actually come out of the closet and speak about all their gender problems and every problem that they're facing, right? So that is why consent is a particularly important thing, because it allows the criminal justice system to empower the victim first of all, because the victim is the one telling their own story. They're at the forefront of their own liberation. This is not only a good thing for the psychology of the victim, but it also trickles down to other minorities within the society, right? They get inspired by the story of the victim to say you can be the definition of your own success. You don't always have to be a victim, and you don't always need anyone to stand up for you, but you can always be at the forefront and run to the front of your own liberation. And then it also tears down the perpetrators, because now the perpetrator holds no power over you, because you're not only physically free, but you're also psychologically empowered because of the tools that then exist, not without
Time
consent.
up.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, Team Affirmative, are you ready for your cross-examination? My clock says that your time starts now.
Okay, so my question is, do you think women shouldn't be represented by government, seeing that you labeled them as victims and that government is the enemy to society?
I think that the role of governments ends at representation, not at running away from consent. So government can represent individuals by drafting policies that empower them to speak, not by going behind their backs and exposing their family closets and all of that stuff. Because then government becomes enemy and not a helper to the people, right?
Okay, so you say that it's a victim-centered policy towards exposing the victim, the complex inferiority complex in victims. How is that so?
So when we say that we want justice that is victim-centered, right? We don't want justice that is attained just because someone got into jail. We think justice goes beyond throwing people in jail, right? We think justice is about having the victim not only physically free from the bondages of abuse, but also psychologically empowered to know that the story was told from their own perception, right? Because when you have government knocking down doors and arresting people, the victim is just a shadow actor in their own story, right? So we think that victim-based justice is more attainable in societies compared to government taking the forefront and not acquiring consent.
Thank you.
Time up. All right. Opposers, it is your time to rebut, and your time starts now.
It's a pleasant day to you. So I think in this debate, what we have done as side non-affirmative is to show you how in our situation, or rather in our side, we are best equipped to tackle the issues that we have at hand. We tell you that the best way to solve gender-based violence is not by silencing the people who are affected by it in the first place, but we believe that the best way we can motivate other people to come forward. Because I think, as we all know, the cases of unreported, the number of unreported cases is probably way more than we could ever imagine. And we believe that the reason why this exists is because women are not given platforms to actually report this and have a say in these things. We believe that the reason why women are still being abused and they still keep quiet is the perception that society has on these people. We believe that the reason why we are best equipped to solve the issue of gender-based violence doesn't start by prosecuting the perpetrators alone. We believe that for us to solve the issue of domestic violence, we have to start from its root source. We believe that the root source is how people view these situations. The root cause of these things is when we know that women have a voice to speak out for themselves and report such cases, right? It doesn't take your neighbor to report your case for you, because we know that there are victim-friendly units whereby there is a 24-hour landline that you can call and get help. You don't have to wait for someone to see that you're being abused. No one has to see you around town walking with bruises so that we know you're being abused. We best believe that in our case, we best tackle the issue of domestic violence. We tell you of the issue of the narration of the story. We believe that the best person who knows the issue of that whole violence that exists in homes is the person who has been most affected. Because when you're getting it from someone who wasn't there, it's not really the same. We believe that the best way to tackle these things is when we take someone who was affected by these things. We take someone who experienced this. Not only are we making these people report these cases, but we are making them have a say and actually tell us what happened. How are we going to solve? What are we doing by this whole thing? We believe that we are going to empower women to motivate other women to come forward. Because we best believe that their case that they brought about, which is, they talked about how, at the end of the day, we believe that perpetrators enforce emotional blackmail on victims. And we tell you that in our case, we best solve the issue of emotional blackmail. Why? Because emotional blackmail, as it is, it already exists in cases whereby women wait for neighbors to report for them. Women wait for someone to see that they are being abused. The case of emotional blackmail already exists, but they then fail to prove to us how their policy best solves the issues that they brought up. And we tell you that as non-affirmative side, that on our side, we best believe that if women are given that platform to speak, if women are given that platform to narrate their story and own the narration of the whole story, we believe that at the end of the day, we best solve the problems that they brought up and at the end of the day failed to prove. So what have we done in this debate? In this debate, we have shown you how silencing the victims at the end of the day doesn't solve the problem in society. It doesn't solve the problem whereby women at the end of the day are still viewed as objects at home. Women, when they get abused, they tell you, go to your aunt, and your aunt will tell you that It's fine. It happens. That's what happens. I've been through that. Just stay there. And we best believe that in our situation, we best deal with the issue of victims and the perpetrator themselves at the end of the day. We best believe that we deserve to win this debate because we have shown you how their side of the debate doesn't solve domestic violence at the end of the day. It doesn't give justice and it doesn't emancipate women from that from that perception that society has on women, and we best believe that we have shown to you how our side of the debate best wins this debate by showing you how we tackle the issue of victims, how we best motivate other women to come forward and to save justice.
I believe
at
that
the
you're
end of
out
the
of
day.
time. All right. Team affirmative, let's have your rebuttal. Your clock starts now.
All right. This House, the people here present, ladies and gentlemen, it will be my duty as the affirmative second speaker to offer a rebuttal to the points raised by the non-affirmative delegation and to demonstrate why their points are relevant and to emphasize our points on why we should prosecute perpetrators of domestic violence without the victim's consent. First of all, the non-affirmative delegation raised the point that women are the main victims to domestic violence. It is our belief as the affirmative delegation that it is not just women who are being victimized. There's also young children who are being victimized by their parents. They could be sibling abuse. There could be violence between young partners, people in relationships. These things happen to everyone. Victimhood is not just happening to women, but to other people as well. Second of all, there is the point to make it seem that government is the enemy and that it is not doing enough to support the victims, abused by the perpetrators. So I now go on to emphasize our points. We believe that government offers support to the victims, and this empowers the victims, not just the women, but the victims as well. It empowers them to speak up. It empowers them by giving them a voice through which their issues can be erased and eradicated. The perpetrators are prone to emotional blackmail the victims. So by helping the victims, government is reducing the chances of those issues around emotional blackmail and abuse by locking up these perpetrators away from society as a whole. And then we're saying that domestic violence doesn't have to be physical to be prosecuted. It can also be emotional. It can also be mentally bruising, emotionally damaging. It can lead to things like depression and social anxiety disorders, which can have long-term effects on the victims. Domestic violence has no age. Children might be scared to also speak out and confront their abusers. So as a way of supporting these victims, we are giving them a chance through government support. And then our policy does indeed empower all victims collectively, not just about women. So basically what we're going to go on to say is that, yes, most victims are afraid to report issues and to speak up. So now by persecuting the perpetrators without the victim's consent, it means that we are actually giving them a way to confront their perpetrators without having to be direct, since they're afraid of confronting these issues, since they're scared. Like, what if the persecutors, do something? They may come back and harm me. And sometimes victims are scared, like they cannot even picture being able to live without their perpetrators. And also the society views the idea of imprisoning your partner who's abusive or a perpetrator. It's a social taboo, and children reporting parents is also a taboo. That I rest our case.
All right, with 2 seconds to spare, thank you very much. Just a quick reminder of our motion at this particular moment is this House would prosecute the perpetrators of domestic violence without the victim's consent. Opposers, your closing remarks now, and your clock starts now.
Panel, we think that this debate is not about the effects of domestic violence. Yes, we agree, all those effects exist. It doesn't matter whatsoever has happened to you, right? We tell you how, in this side of the House, we're not saying let people not be prosecuted. No, we're saying let people be prosecuted. But the question is firstly, how, who is reporting? And secondly, how does it then trickle down to affect the victim, the community, and the perpetrator? I'm going to use these three stakeholders to prove to you why we win this debate and why we deserve first, right? So firstly, we're going to tell you how a policy in essence is as good as its implementation and is as good as how it trickles down to each and every member of society, right? So I'm going to prove to you why their policy doesn't work and why we prefer our side of the House. Firstly, within community. Panel, we think that any policy needs community engagement and community buy-in, right? So in cases like these ones, where government is trying to make people open up about their traumatic experiences in order to bring gender-based violence rates down, right? We don't think that government imposing itself on communities, not seeking firstly for consent, is something that works. Because firstly, it already deems the community as a third party in the involvement of fighting things like gender-based violence, right? Of which we don't think that's how the criminal justice system ought to work. When the government imposes itself, it's then viewed as an enemy coming against the community instead of working together as a community. So when it comes to community as a stakeholder, we think we get better engagement on our side when you have got more educational drives and the empowerment of social structures that already exist. Things like the victim-friendly unit of the police, things like organizations like Say What, and all other organizations that fight against gender-based violence. When you strengthen those organizations and communities, you get better engagement than the government imposing itself and going ahead to prosecute people without consent, right? And then secondly, the victim themselves, the victim of gender-based violence. Why is consent from a victim important when it comes to bringing down the tyranny of gender-based violence? We think firstly, it empowers the victim gets closure, and they get true justice. Because from their side of the House, the best case scenario, what you get is people going to jail and people getting arrested. You might offer some counseling sessions here and there, but it never really works, because what you do is you allow someone else to be the molder of a story of a person who's a victim. This means that this person, until the day they die, they'll always view themselves as a victim and not as the author of their own new story. They never get true empowerment and they never get true psychological freedom, right? So from our side of the House, when you put the victims at the forefront of reporting their own cases and then getting consent from them, we tell you how there are structures that already exist to protect these individuals, right? Like the victim-friendly units that I've been talking about. There exist structures to protect them from any form of blackmail, and when you put it out there within community, then people can understand. Then the perpetrator gets the superiority complex taken away from them when the victim is at the forefront, because they get to lead their own story. Thanks.
Time. Thank you, team of opposers. All right. Team affirmative, your clock starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, this issue of domestic violence is not about some parade. It's not about some media being outspoken, ladies and gentlemen. This is not about media presence. It's about addressing issues at hand. Ladies and gentlemen, when you see someone getting fits on the floor, what do? Do you pass by and wait for them to tell you, I've got fits? You help that person because you need to make sure you save a life. Ladies and gentlemen, 30% of women that have experienced domestic abuse are killed. 2% of those people that experience domestic violence are from children to parents, and 1% of them are sibling to sibling. Ladies and gentlemen, not all these people have got the audacity or the power to approach the police officers or the friendly patrols that they are talking about in addressing these issues, ladies and gentlemen. The government is part of the community. When you say the government is not part of the community, they are the utmost top part of the community. Now, when you're saying that the government is an enemy to community, now you're trying to say the community is an enemy to itself. Ladies and gentlemen, let the government intervene. Let the government be able to identify, to see, and to take action against those people that diminish and infringe the rights of women, children, and any other person in the society. We cannot live in a society where we wait for some media presence, where we wait for someone to go and get our cameras and rush and say, oh no, I've got emotional abuse. No, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at them, identify, take them, and make sure we bring justice to its table, ladies and gentlemen. We are all about justice. We are not all here about writing a novel. We're not all here about making a documentary, but we're here about justice, ladies and gentlemen. It is unfair. It is solely unfair to base an argument because of something that you want someone to make her own story, or to give another person's perspective so that you can get your own way to do things. Ladies and gentlemen, we will enforce police and we'll make sure that these people identify. These people do mental checks. Some people walk and they are walking dead people, ladies and gentlemen. Some people walk and some people are just walking zombies, ladies and gentlemen. We need to identify those walking zombies and make sure we put to justice those people that killed them inside, mentally, physically, and emotionally, ladies and gentlemen. Let us not waste time trying to make documentaries. Let us not waste time trying to make things complicated as they are not complicated. The government is for the people, shall always be for the people, and always be for the people, ladies and gentlemen. With this, I raised my case.
All right, are you sure? With 28 seconds to go?
Indeed.
All right, thank you very much, and the clock has stopped. Now, the adjudicators are not going to have an easy time picking who goes to the next stage. As you could see, both sides were extremely passionate about their motions for and against. Team Affirmative says, look, you know what? We need to break it down. We need to help when it's time to help. It's not about fanfare. It's about getting action and getting it done immediately. Team opposers will tell you that, look, don't tell her story for her. Don't tell his story for him. Let him be able to tell himself. Who do you think has the right frame of mind in this competition? Should it be Africa University or should it be NUST? Which one should go forward? Tell us in the comment section. Of course, the hashtags, remember, are SASI for Hope and SASI Debate 2021. When we come back, we have the next round of elimination. Who is it? We'll let you know shortly.
Welcome to the Condomized Desk, and of course this platform is courtesy of Say What. I'm joined by Catherine from Africa University. How are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Great, thank you. So I know that in your debate you were looking at the issues of domestic violence. Please tell us a bit more about your discussion earlier on.
So our topic of discussion was if the government should intervene in identifying perpetrators of domestic violence, and Africa University were in support of that motion, and the others were saying that they should not intervene as it actually diminishes the voice of the woman and deprives the woman from saying their story.
It's interesting that we should talk about this. Now, I'm not going to ask for your position as Africa University. I want to find out from you, as a young woman, what is your take regarding this matter?
I actually think it's okay for government to intervene in these issues because not everyone has the guts to go to the police and report their partner or to report their parent for domestic abuse. So we see that if we actually let the government identify perpetrators and put them to justice, it's fine, because society should not live in fear just because it's my mom, it's my husband, it's my boyfriend. So yes, I think it's okay.
Let me talk to you as a young man. Whenever it is that we talk about domestic violence, a lot of the times, to a greater percentage, men are perpetrators. Do you feel that as men you are having enough conversations in the community where you can adequately address domestic violence issues?
I think this debate is very much crucial because it's not lies when we say that men are the biggest perpetrators when it comes to domestic violence. And I believe that platforms for men to actually talk about these things aren't really there. You know, when something happens in your home, you don't feel the need to go and tell the next person that, guys, I'm facing problems with my wife.